Story 14. The chilling mystery of the missing boy and the Shadowy Hat Man, true supernatural encounter. Alright, let me tell you a story that will sound too crazy to believe, but I promise, this is something that many people from the neighborhood swear actually happened. It's one of those stories that sticks with you, giving you chills every time you think about it. It's not just a tale, it's something that defies explanation. I want to apologize in advance if my English isn't perfect, but I hope you'll stick with me because this story is worth it. It all happened a couple of years ago in Tijuana, Mexico, in the Florido area, on a quiet private street where my boyfriend's family lives. This street is one of those tight-knit communities where everyone knows everyone else. Kids play outside together, neighbors share meals, and life feels peaceful until something happens that shatters that peace. My boyfriend told me this story first, but it wasn't until recently that my sister-in-law confirmed it, adding details that made it even more unsettling. So, let me set the stage for you. It was a normal day, probably a weekend. The kind of day when people relax, kids run around outside playing, and families stay inside enjoying the comfort of their homes as the evening approaches. My boyfriend's family was doing just that, relaxing in their living room, watching TV, winding down for the day. The sun had set, and the street was getting quieter. Kids had started heading home, and you could feel the calm that comes when the day transitions into night. Then, there was a knock at the door. My boyfriend's mom got up to answer it. Standing there was Anna, one of their neighbors, and she looked panicked. Her youngest son, Miguelito, was missing. Anna asked if Miguelito might be in their house, maybe playing with their kids. But my boyfriend's mom shook her head. They hadn't seen him. Anna explained that they'd searched everywhere, their house, their yard, and even the nearby spots where Miguelito loved to play. But he was nowhere to be found. Now, you have to understand, Anna wasn't the type to overreact. She wasn't one of those moms who panics over nothing. So when she said Miguelito was missing, everyone took it seriously. The neighbors started gathering, forming small groups to search the private street and beyond. They checked the playground, the alleyways, even the trash bins, just in case. As the minutes turned into hours, the situation became more dire. Miguelito was a small boy, and it was getting dark. The fear in Anna's voice spread like wildfire, making everyone uneasy. My boyfriend's mom could feel the weight of the situation. She kept telling Anna, "Don't worry, we'll find him." He couldn't have gone far. But deep down, she, like everyone else, was starting to wonder, where could he be? After a while, someone suggested calling the police. It was the only logical step left. When the police arrived, they started asking the family questions. Where had they last seen Miguelito? What was he wearing? Did anyone see him leave the house? But the answers didn't add up. Miguelito had been eating cereal at the table just before he vanished. Anna said she had only gone upstairs for a minute, maybe two. When she came back, he was gone. The officers decided to start their search in the house itself. They went room by room, checking closets, under beds, even in the attic. But there was no sign of the boy. Everyone in the neighborhood stood outside, watching as the search unfolded. Tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Then, suddenly, there was a loud boom. It wasn't just a thud, it was the kind of noise that makes your heart skip a beat, like something heavy had fallen or been dropped. The sound came from inside Anna's house. Everyone froze. Anna ran back inside, her heart racing, with the police following close behind. And there, In the middle of the living room was Miguelito. He was sitting at the table, his head resting on his arms like he had just fallen asleep. His cereal bowl was still in front of him, the milk now warm and untouched. Anna let out a gasp, relief flooding her voice as she shouted, "He's here. He's okay." But something wasn't right. Everyone in the family had searched that room at least a dozen times. The table was in plain sight. It was the first thing you saw when you walked into the house. There was no way Miguelito could have been there the whole time without anyone noticing. As neighbors came in to see what was happening, the same question was on everyone's mind. How could he have been there all along? And where had the loud boom come from? But Miguelito was safe, and for the moment, that was all that mattered. The neighbors slowly returned to their homes, and the police left, chalking it up to a misunderstanding. Anna hugged her son tightly that night, but she couldn't shake the unease that lingered. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Miguelito seemed fine, physically, at least, but he was unusually quiet, as if he couldn't quite process what had happened. A few weeks later, Anna visited my boyfriend's mom to catch up. They talked about the usual things: family, neighborhood gossip, the weather. But eventually, the conversation turned to that strange night. My boyfriend's mom hesitated before asking, "Anna, what really happened that day? I mean, where was Miguelito?" Anna's face changed. She looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to talk about it. But then she sighed and said, "I've been trying to figure that out myself. Because what he told me, it doesn't make sense." She went on to explain what Miguelito had said after everyone had left that night. He told her he had fallen asleep at the table, just like she had seen. But then he woke up, except he wasn't in the living room anymore. He was in a dark place, a space that felt endless and cold. He said he could hear whispers all around him, voices he couldn't understand. Then, he saw something, or someone. A tall man wearing a hat. The man didn't move, didn't speak at first. He just stood there, watching Miguelito with eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Finally, the man spoke. His voice was deep, almost like a growl. He held out a key and said, "Do you want to see something special?" Miguelito said he didn't want to take the key, but he couldn't stop himself. His hand moved on its own, reaching out and grabbing it. The moment he touched the key, everything went black. The next thing he knew, he was back at the table, with Anna shaking him awake.